Exactly a week ago, I posted this video in which I exposed some weird machinations with a P320's trigger that click-hungry influ-poopers were using on their channels. I caught some flack for showing this. I even lost 5 or 6 subscribers. From M18, right? So now I'm gonna jam that screw in here. No drop. And let's see if I strike it, what happens. All right, and the strike safety, drop safety worked. It resets, boom. And then on August 9th, this news broke out. So let's see where that story goes in the next few days. Meanwhile, I would like to address yet another popular YouTube video condemning P320. We all saw this video. Sig P320 firing uncommanded when being holstered. What a terrible thing for this young shooter to experience, but also what a great opportunity to dive in and find out how it could possibly happen. Let's slow it down a little more and look at this terrible moment as it happens. Clearly that's when it fired uncommanded. Let's roll it back to make sure that that moment happened as the shooter was holstering his SIG. Now that I watched it over and over, and thanks to the good quality of this video, I can see some of the mistakes that could have led to this incident, starting with what's known as limp wrist. Notice the bounce of the muzzle on the last shot. Even a venerable Colt 1911 or Browning high power may malfunction when limp wristed. And by now it's pretty clear with the Sig P320 the gun's dynamic matters. And I could pretty much eliminate the holster malfunction because I saw this. You can see when the gun starts being placed in the holster, the latching mechanism is all the way in, and in the next moment it opens up to allow the trigger guard in and then closes again. And that jolt, I theorize, is what's firing the gun. Could the misfire be avoided? Perhaps if the shooter had the safety on, which they didn't. You can see at a couple different moments here that the safety is off. Sure, the gun is partially to blame. For example, if you limp wrist a Colt, it will just fail to feed. Where with the P320, it's a trigger bar spring that fails to reset the trigger under certain conditions, which also prevents the sear safety from engaging. But in this video, I'd like to talk about adjustments that the shooter or his instructor could make to prevent limp wristing to begin with. And right before the last shot is fired, here's the grip. As you can see, wrist is not aligned with the forearm, and forearm is not aligned with the shoulder. If only the instructor would have told the shooter to straighten their elbows, to complete a classical isolysis stance, arms straight, shoulders, elbows, wrist aligned, and aimed elevation controlled with the body angle, then the recoil would be absorbed by the shooter's body and a 4-inch muzzle flip would not have happened. Let's look at the overlapped screenshots again. Inappropriate elbow positioning leads to the wrist bent during the shot, which in turn leads to immense muzzle flip. Notice the shoulders didn't even move an inch. And for an instructor not to insist that the safety is engaged the moment the finger comes off the trigger is negligent. So do I think Sig is entirely in the clear? No, there's plenty of experienced gunsmiths and very technically inclined people showing that there are conditions under which the fire control group and sear engagement group don't function quite as expected. But this is not what this video is about. I am just tired, of all the hype, negative, positive, surrounding, our manly pursuits, guns, knives, etc. And that's why I'm publishing this. I also wanted to go back to a couple points I made here. Here's a similar type holster with a, I think it's called Class 2, I'm not sure, retention mechanism here. And it's designed when the gun is inserted. Let me show you that it's empty. When the gun is inserted in the holster, the little latch catches on the trigger guard. This is Smith & Wesson M&P. Obviously not a Sig, I don't have it with me today. Anyway, it engages the trigger guard, and that's what retains the gun. When you press on this button, the little latch inside it moves out of the way and allows you to extract the gun. And so this is what you see kind of in the video. Watch what this little paddle is doing. See, it moves out of the way and clicks in place. If the gun were to continue into the holster, if there was nothing stopping it from going past that point, or if something is jammed there and somehow falls in right at the right moment when you're inserting the gun, then the gun will fire in the holster. Another reason I think a lot of holstering accidents happen is folks forget to move the trigger finger off the trigger. And so what happens in these cases, it's easy to show, if you're still on the trigger when you're inserting the gun, you can actually, you're jamming it in. I don't want to hurt my finger, but as you're jamming it in, you can fire accidentally. Again, obscure chance, but stuff happens. Of course, some of my viewers think I'm defending Sig. Let me prove it to you that I'm not. Look at the timeline of the statement that they made. It came out about a week after the incident happened. During that week, what happens is the military conducts the preliminary investigation. The unit in which incident happens conducts their own investigation, and then the command sends an independent, officer and NCOs to conduct investigation by people who are not part of that unit. After preliminary investigation is concluded, typically their requests for information are sent to parties that are involved or about to be involved in a follow-up investigation. So that tells me that by the end of the first week after the incident, Sig got a wind that military was not 100% sure, or maybe they even knew that now it's being investigated as negligent homicide. And that statement was free. They had nothing to risk. Now, I'm speculating a little bit, but I am somewhat familiar with how such investigations are conducted. My channel is here to fight BS. And sometimes I can be wrong. My viewers know that. And I always come back and admit it. So I don't expect the influ poopers with 1 million subscribers out there, or 300,000 subscribers and 750,000 views on these videos, they'll go back and apologize for feeding you BS. Because probably they didn't even think it was BS at the time. Except for these two clowns that were jamming shit into the triggers. And that's stupid. But they're really cool, in-depth dive-ins, talking about fire control group on this gun. And I enjoyed watching them. Not these two clowns, though.